Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Kris. I did a video about, which is not released yet, about Robert Smalls, a former slave. Then I did a video about Billy Lee, former slave. And now I'm covering the story of Paul Jennings. And the reason why I'm covering it is because I have the book. Slave in the White House. Paul Jennings and the Madisons. Really good book, really good story. And so I decided that I'm going to kind of spotlight some people who deserve a little bit of recognition for things that they accomplished and things that they did. He's credited with being one of the people that helped save the George Washington painting during the War of 1812 when the British burned it. But there's also accounts that he wasn't there. He was with James Madison. Dolly Madison, I know for sure, gets that credit, but this isn't about her. But before we get started, click that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. This channel is, I'm guessing, teaching Black history. So 510 views in 4 years. Since it is a short video, I am actually going to throw on another one from James Madison's Montpelier. Paul Jennings' account of James Madison's death. It's almost 5 minutes. This is just over 6. So, be 2 in 1. We're going to get into it.
This page was created to teach Black history. Unfortunately, the American educational system was designed to exclude our real historical account, so we are here to dismantle it. It's time to enlighten those of us who have been kept in the dark. I too was a Black man who didn't know enough about our own history, so I began to dig deeper and do my own research. I want people of all races and cultures to join together to learn our history as one. Here, I will share all of my findings. Please share and support Teaching Black History.
The story of Paul Jennings. Jennings was born into slavery in 1799. His mother, who was African Native American, was owned by the Madisons. His father was Benjamin Jennings, an English trader. The mixed-race slave, as a child, began to serve James Madison as his footman and later was trained as his body servant.
According to the book, which he did write, but this book is written by Elizabeth Dowling Taylor. I think she kind of took his book and took a lot of things and kind of made it a bigger book. According to the book, he didn't know his mother's name. He just knew her as, I think it was Mama. And that was about it. He never knew her name. I think she died when he was still young. But yeah, he never even knew her name.
At the age of 10, Jennings accompanied Madison and his family to the White House after the statesman election as president. In 1814, during the burning of Washington, as British troops were approaching the White House, Jennings, at age 15, with 2 other men, reportedly helped save the noted Gilbert Strout portrait of George Washington, known as the Lansdowne portrait. Other White House slaves helped save such valuables of silver. The portrait was returned to the White House, where it is the only surviving item from before the War of 1812. After the president ended his second term in 1817, Jennings was 18 years old and continued to serve Madison as his valet for the rest of the president's life. Jennings married Fanny, a slave held on other plantation, and they had 5 children who lived with their mother. Jennings was with Madison when he died in 1836. In 1837, the widow, Dolly Madison, took Jennings with her when she returned to Washington, D.C. to live in the winter seasons. He was forced to leave his family behind, but was permitted to visit them occasionally. In 1841, she wrote her will, which would free Jennings after her death, the only slave whom she freed in her will. In Washington as an adult, Jennings saw a much broader community. Among its many free blacks at the time were descendants of slaves of the former presidents Washington, Jefferson, and Madison. In 1844, Fanny, Jennings' wife, died in Virginia. The following year, Dolly Madison hired out Jennings to President James Polk in Washington. Often slaves who were hired out got to keep a portion of their earnings, but she kept it all. Fearing for his future, Jennings tried to arrange a purchase pat with Madison, but she sold him to an insurance agent for $200 in 1846. 6 months later, Senator Daniel Webster intervened to buy him from the new owner for $120 and gave Jennings his freedom, for which he paid the senator in work. He entered the large free black community of Washington, which outnumbered slaves by 3 to 1 at the time. In 1848, Jennings helped plan a mass escape of 77 slaves from Washington, D.C. on the schooner Pearl. It was the largest slave escape attempt in U.S. history. In 1849, Jennings married again to Desdemona Brooks, a free mulatto whose mother was white. She lived in Alexandria, Virginia. After the war, Jennings worked at the newly established Pension Brewer, part of the Department of the Interior, to handle claims of veterans and soldiers' families. He made the acquaintance of John Brooks Russell, who helped Jennings gain publication of his memoir as a book in 1865. It is considered the first White House memoir. A free man, Jennings bought a lot and reunited with his children. After Desdemona's death, Jennings married a third time in 1870 to Amelia Dorsey. He died in Northwest Washington, D.C. at the age of 75 in 1874.
It's probably, you don't want that to pop up on the screen. We're talking about him. Okay. The one thing that he did not cover was after James Madison's death, Dolly Madison ended up getting into really bad debt, and he stepped in and paid her debt. He got into real estate and stuff like that, made a lot of money, got some property that his family still lives in today in Georgetown. But he stepped in, I believe, twice to cover Dolly Madison's death, and even paid for her funeral, which she was in Washington at the time. Was she in New York? I think she was in Washington, maybe New York. But he had paid for her to be brought back and buried at Montpelier. Is pretty good. But that was a quick history. We'll go into this one.
Hello everyone, my name is Kyle Stetz and I'm the Director of Education and Visitor Engagement here at James Madison's Montpelier. And we're standing in a room known as Mr. Madison's room. And it's in this room in June of 1836 that James Madison will pass away. And one of our most detailed and really our only...
Anybody keeping track at home, it's June 28th.
Only description of Madison's passing and his final words comes from a member of the enslaved community. And that was written and noted by Paul Jennings. Paul Jennings was born here at Montpelier as an enslaved person in 1799. And at the age of 10, when James Madison was elected to become President of the United States, the Madisons took many of their enslaved domestics with them, including, at that time, 10-year-old Paul Jennings. And I often imagine the emotions that were running through Paul Jennings' mind and his heart at age 10, being taken away from his family, being taken to a city that he likely had never been to, and probably asking himself when, if ever, he might return to his family here at Montpelier. Now, during the Madison's presidency, we go to war. And in August of 1814, Paul Jennings is there in the White House the very day that the British marched down the streets of our new nation's capital and set all of the government buildings ablaze. Now, both that event and Madison's passing are recorded in a memoir titled A Colored Man's Reminiscences of Mr. Madison that Paul Jennings will publish later in his life. Now, after Madison's presidency is over, Paul will return here to Montpelier, and he will take on a somewhat new role. He will become James Madison's personal enslaved body servant. And so he did a variety of tasks for Madison, as he notes in his memoir, Shaving James Madison, bringing him books, basically waiting on every one of Madison's needs. And Paul is in this room in June of 1836, witnessing the passing of the father of the Constitution. And we have Paul's exact words.
I was always with Mr. Madison till he died, and shaved him every other day for 16 years. For 6 months before his death he was unable to walk, and spent most of his time reclined on a couch, but his mind was bright. And with his numerous visitors he talked with as much animation and strength of voice as ever I heard him in his best days. I was present when he died. That morning, Suki brought him his breakfast as usual.
She brought him his breakfast. What were his final words? I think he stopped eating, or he wasn't hungry, and I think he says it's nothing but a change. I don't remember now exactly what he said. Why he wasn't I don't remember now. Sorry, I was going to try to... It's something about a change, I think. I don't remember.
He could not swallow. His niece, Mrs. Willis, said, "What is the matter, Uncle James?" "Nothing more than a change of mind, my dear." His head instantly dropped, and he ceased breathing as quietly as the snuff of a candle goes out.
So after Madison passes away, I have to imagine that running through the minds of the enslaved community is, what is next for us? Because that choice, that decision, their fate was not in their hands. And we know that Madison, after his passing, his will is executed. He does not free a single enslaved individual. So Paul Jennings continues to be enslaved now by Dolly Madison. Dolly Madison will move back and forth between Montpelier and Washington, D.C. before her permanent move to the nation's capital in 1844. Paul will remain with Dolly in Washington, and by 1846, Dolly Madison begins to continue, I should say, sell off a portion of the enslaved community. And in that year, she will sell Paul Jennings to an insurance agent by the name of Pollard Webb. And within about 6 months, Pollard Webb sells Paul Jennings to Daniel Webster, the noted American statesman. And this final transfer of Paul's ownership to Daniel Webster is with the understanding that Paul will be able to work off his freedom for $8 a month. And by 1847, Paul Jennings becomes a free man. And one of the first things we believe that Paul did once he got his freedom was he had an image of himself taken, a daguerreotype image. And today, Paul Jennings' descendants still possess a bit of a later copy of that photo, a cabinet card photo of Paul Jennings. And Paul remains the only individual member of the enslaved community that we have a photograph of. Paul will remain for the rest of his life in Washington, D.C., eventually purchasing property on L Street, a home, and then an adjoining lot that his descendants still own to this day.
This is Monticello, home of Thomas Jefferson, our nation's third president.
Hello.
Okay. Well, hope you appreciate that. Just my little attempt to try to get some recognition to some people that deserve it. And I'm a big fan of presidents, and coming with that should also be a responsibility to highlight those who were enslaved by some of those people, some of those presidents. And I'm trying to record. What is with all this talking outside just because I have the windows open? Oh, these people. Okay. Well, we're going to end this here. I hope you enjoyed. So until next time, have a good day. Have a good night.